welcome to another episode of So We Are Here. And today, before we dive into what we're diving in today, in case you are new to the channel, my name is Palesa Kena, the
Superstar. It's your boy here, Sinikiwe, Sinikiwe Sishuba.
And I'm here, Musa Mileni.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, guys, for another episode. Road to maybe by now we are road to 100,000
Subscribers. Sometimes you need to see it. Ubona ungayiboni. Understand?
Thanks for supporting us, guys. Thank
Thank you.
for you just riding with us so far. Swah Nation, that's who you are, and we don't take it lightly. So we're gonna dive into today's topic. Today's topic is about identity.
Sure.
Identity.
Identity.
So
Who you are.
yeah, like if I were to think about what identity is, I think practically in J. If you are watching and you have an ID, ne? When we go to the home affairs, right? You
Whoa.
get your ID card, right? You get it sharp and then you have your smart card. And then hallelujah to those who still have the green book. You are legends.
Yes.
Veterans.
Green Book Heroes.
So, so if I were to pick up Sneaky smart ID, I would immediately be able to recognize him because that's his identity. And so for me, when I think about identity, I think about some things, someone you are recognized as. So like identified as, oh, okay, I know these eyes, I know this person. So practically for me, that's what identity is. It's who you are, right? And so obviously as children of God, that is who we are.
Yeah.
Daughter of God, son of God. Now, do people recognize that? I don't know.
Question.
But what does identity to you, Musa?
I think you've placed it wonderfully.
On the spot.
On the spot. I think identity is really who you are, and also when you die, what people say about you, how they remember
Okay.
who you are. And I think with identity is your identity. We look at, or people know you by a certain trait that you do or by the things you do, you know. So yeah, it just comes back to who you are. It's not, it's not about, it's about the personality as well. I think we also forget about about the personality and what you carry and the legacy you leave behind.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Ah, you guys stole the words. Identity. Yeah, I like you guys put it. It's who we identify you as. And the traits that you identified by. I think that's basically identity. Um, it also stems from like you put it, legacy, like the past, like what got you where you are, who you are, character, so on and so forth. So identity is broad, guys. I think there's
So
no
something
true, yeah, there's no true definition about identity, but the best description is how Palesa put it. It's a feature or a factor about you that is distinguishable from the rest.
who you are, right?
Right.
Mm.
So I think that's identity for me. It's what makes you stand out. If you're gonna look at it in the physical, your nose, your eyes, your eyebrows, your look in the sense. That's why you don't have your toes as an ID. You have your face because that's the first thing we see. It's your face is the most identifiable feature. So yeah, identity. What is identity in the spiritual sense for you guys?
In the spiritual sense, identity for me is something that I can tie to eternity. I can't tie my identity to something that is fleeting. So when I speak about anything spiritual, I always think about anything that is eternal. About this these guys.
Yeah. Bless you. I don't identify.
I don't identify with sickness.
To say
It is not. It is not say eternal.
Yeah.
So identity for me is not tied to anything that is temporary. It's not tied to anything that is fleeting. Identity for me is tied to something that never changes. It like for example, I could never not be my mother's child. That for me, on a practical level, that never changes. On a spiritual level, it's that I can't tie to anything that is temporary. So I can't tie to what I do. So identity is who I am in the spiritual and not what I do. So for example, God really encourages us to not set our sights on things that are on earth because they're fleeting, but on things that are in heaven and above. Because at the end of the day, what ties us to God is our relationship with Him as our Father. And that is what we take when we leave everything here on earth. When we get to heaven or when we get to the gates, it won't be about, oh, I was a journalist. It won't be about, oh, I had these X number of disciples or people even in my church. It would be, do I know you or not? Do I recognize you? Do I see myself in you? And if not, then that's when Jesus said, He will say, Guti, I don't know you. So it's from a place of just knowing me intimately. Into me He sees. That for me is, so if I say something is spiritual, it's something that is not tangible. So I can't tie, and not to say that being a lawyer is like a tangible thing, for example, but that is not my identity. It's what I do, and that can change. It's my avenue. It's what I do. That can change. That can fleet. People can take that away. Can whatever. But the fact that for me spiritually, it's something that just it's fixed. Yeah,
Okay.
it's fixed. Can't change. Yeah, that's what it means spiritually, identity for me. Musa?
I think it's a tough question.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Palesa, you've said a lot, but I think I want to change it up a bit. But I think for me, it's like, what do you idolize? You know, and I think we tend to idolize other things, and what you idolize is what you become, in a sense. And when you start idolizing, let's say, a rapper or whatever, you slowly change your lifestyle according to what that person is doing.
You conform.
Yeah, you start you listen to music, you start following into those patterns as well. And with me is I need to be careful what I need to be careful in what I idolize. And that is why I always say choose God first, because that is the lifestyle I want to live, is the Bible. And the Bible, and the thing is, it's not I want to live it, is because I've seen what the Bible can do. I've witnessed it. I've seen it with my own eyes. And there's a lot of stories about the Bible out there, and there's a lot of testimonies. But for me, it's coming back to, what do I want for my life? Do I want depression? Do I want, you know, trauma and all of that? Then I will idolize those things. But for me, it's what's important, and what's important is putting God first. So be careful of what you idolize, because you slowly become.
You conform to that image, which identity is image.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
also adopt that nature as well. So it's very important
Nature.
who, yeah, who you surround yourself with, because you can identify as that specific group as well.
Right.
So that's a good point, man. But
Yeah.
for me, I think identity is such a broad subject, but I think we it actually boils down to is really the imagery of it. Like we said, in terms of our IDs, in terms of our identifying factors, is just our features that that come together to make a face that is identifiable to the human mind, to say this is Palesa, this is Sinikiwe. If I have to put it in a spiritual sense, um, and how, I mean, if you look back at how Jesus lost his identity, what was the identifying factor about him that was lost? When they plucked his beard, when they removed the facial aspect of him that identified to say this is Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And we were made in his image. Yeah. Right? We were made in his likeness. So even in the way we need to uphold ourselves, it needs to be of great character, because being in a certain space and in a certain field, and we live in a generation where your brand is everything. Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes that can also consume you if you don't understand what your identity, or rather what
Who you are.
you are within that branding space.
Right.
I mean, take this for example. Along the way, we could easily influence the perspective of people's people's view of and perspective of us.
Mm.
But if we remain in the original identity we were created of in God's image, and we also remain true to ourselves, then that nature we can adopt because it's good. It's not fleeting, like you
Nature.
said. It's
Yeah.
not bad. It's not. It all
Mm.
goes down to the nature of who you are.
Right.
That's why if you've noticed, even like from a biological sense, from the cellular level, when we grow, we are part of two people who came together and they decided let's make a palesa.
Or maybe they never
And you
decided.
yeah, and wow, as long as it was consensual, joking. But yeah, if we boil it down to that crux, even in the biological level, it took the two, they came together, they made a palisa, and those features that are identifiable to say palisa is a child of.
Yeah.
You can
Mm.
see it from her mother.
The
She
apple
took
doesn't
that.
fall far
You can
from the
see from the father she took
the tree.
another identifying factor is the family you're in as well. How you identified as a Kena, as a Sishuba, as a millennial. Those are also identifying factors that sum up who you are. But you determine where you're going. But there's a belonging in identity.
Mm.
For me, that's what I feel. And if I'm to testify as well, for the longest of time, I think the biggest thing for me that I struggled with was identity because I always wanted to fit in something.
Yeah.
I always wanted to fit in a certain group, in a certain culture, in a certain trend, and you forget that you are made in God's image, in the uniqueness in yourself. You don't need to fit in; you need to be present
Yeah.
in your identity. So for me, it was a growing up. It was a very difficult thing. That's why you are easily bullied
Yeah.
because you don't understand who you are. Words hurt you.
Or you fall into peer pressure.
Yeah.
Pressure.
Pressure. Yeah.
It all stems down from the perspective of identity.
Mm.
Yeah, that's my view. So for you, Palisa, where do you feel like identity was such a big thing for you, and where have you grown from that aspect?
Hmm. Um, I think because I think naturally one would say, or I would say I'm a late bloomer. So I think, for example, dating for me was never really like a thing. Like growing up in high school, every girl was dating, but it never really bothered me in any shape or form. But I think because naturally just things happen very slowly, gradually for me, be it physically, be it with work, be it with school, be it with everything like that. And so I'm grateful that the Lord really found me and made me his child. Or rather, there was a reconciliation through being born again when I was 19, because that was immediately when I came out of high school and going into varsity or the real world. But even with that, it was just like a slow process of eventually getting into varsity, eventually. But I'm grateful because when I got into a relationship with God as my father, he validated who I am so that when things are not happening as quickly as it's happening for other people, whether they're getting into varsity or graduating, whether they're getting into relationships, getting married, getting a car, getting a house, getting all of that, I never felt a sense of I need to compare myself to who they are and what they have, because I'm validated as a child in my father's house. I know that my father's plans for me are good. And so I don't know. I don't think I've ever necessarily struggled with comparison because I knew from early on that who I was. Well, early on for me is 19. Because remember, I'm like a late bloomer. So for other people, early on is like 12, 13. In this generation, early on is like 11, 12, because things are so fast paced. So yeah, I think knowing who I am, and even now in a workplace where people are like, oh, you're not in a relationship or you're not married, I'm not moved because I know who I am. I know I'm my father's child. I know his plans for me. I know I never feel like I need to compare myself with people who are younger than me, because my identity validates me and it validates who I am. Like, your dad. Like, you don't have to, like, if you know Guti, your dad is the president. Like, you're not, like, man,
Yeah. You
or like you are, oh, Tatazel, Tatazel, you Zazazel.
different. Different.
Yeah. So, in a world where relationships are always in your face, success is always in your face, who you are, determines also where you go. So the fact that I knew who I am and I still do, I don't rush in, I don't make decisions nje, noma kanjani, haphazardly. I don't just nje follow the crowd. I just remain as my father's daughter. So yeah, that's me.
I think for me, um, one thing I can say is that I- and this is my story of it, and I think I did share this. Is music started becoming my identity after a while. The entertainment life started becoming my identity, and I want to show you guys the danger of it. So like I've been saying, I've started church. In church, I was always in the technical team, and that started in sound. But I started liking the sound, and then sound led me to what entertainment, which can also, what I'm trying to say that is, you can be planted in the church, but your identity can change. Where it all depends on what you focus on. But what I'm trying to go with this is start focusing on music, which then led me to DJing, and then that led me to um a different world out there, because that's what I was starting to put my identity in. Because the music I started consuming was, I'm a piano back then, and in mostly piano songs back then, it was just alcohol, sex, the usual things. And then that's where my identity started shifting too. And it started putting me in those positions where I would find myself in those type of positions, in those type of areas, because I wasn't secure with my identity anymore. And I remember, even with my DJing, what slowly started happening is I would start attracting the wrong people. And with attracting the wrong people, it started pushing me to a point where, I there was a very old lady who had an interest in me, started liking me.
Older.
Older. Like,
Like,
You almost had a chuka.
hey, Buddha.
Yay. As in, the Lord was like,
no, come back, come back. So yeah, I think what, 10 years, 10, 12 years older.
da,
Older.
your senior.
Sister, like a senior, like old enough to be my sister, yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
because my identity wasn't in Christ anymore, and I was fixated on alcohol, DJing, clubbing, those are the things that I started attracting.
Sure.
So I think what people forget is how important is your identity and what you idolize. That's why I said idolize. What you need to be careful what you idolize, because what you idolize you become. And also that also puts you in a bit of depression, because you see how other people are doing. You start comparing yourself to be like, okay, but why am I not on Kabza the Smalls level? Why am I not on?
Okay.
Why am I not? What must I do to get on that level? And that also started becoming the priority, to say that, okay, but I also want the flashy car, I also want the flashy lifestyle.
Maybe that's the solution.
Maybe that's the solution. Not, and then you put so much pressure on yourself, and you start becoming depressed. You start going into this position where I'm like, I can't get, this world is tough for me. I can't do this. I can't do that. It's because you put so much pressure, but yet you don't even know what those people are going through. And that's one thing we need to realize. What we idolize, we slowly we become, but it's not easy to get to some of those things.
I think what I'm hearing from you is that identity shapes decision making.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It does. And
It's very nice.
identity, always what I hear always when we as women, like when we have our events, or even the men, is that identity equals to destiny. It does determine where you eventually end up, and that's how serious it is.
Links to purpose.
It does. It links to purpose. It links to which ultimately links to your destiny. And I think that's why the enemy attacks identity so much.
Because it's divine. Babe.
Like, he attacks identity because identity is tied to marriage. Identity is like, it's tied to so many things that in fact, in any way, when you mentioned that we are created in his image and his likeness, the enemy doesn't want that. The enemy wants to distort the image and the likeness of God that we are created in. And someone even asked me one time, what do you mean you're created in the image and the likeness of God? You've never met him. It's character. it really is like what Usniwe said, that so many things form our identity, but it's that's why even when you're not in the room, people can speak of your character or not, or lack of, and that is who you are. And so we're called as children of God to be formed. The word of God says we ought to be formed in the we need to be conformed in the nature of our big brother, which is Jesus Christ. Because who is you, or what is the nature of Christ? The Holy Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. I went to Sunday school. And faithfulness. Though that should be our identity. That's who we should be identified as. So that ultimately at the end of the day, people can see God even in us. And so
Yeah, I think it's so broad. I also think, especially as a guy, I'm gonna speak to the gentleman. Yeah, it really identity is a big thing, and we chill in a world where identity is now tied in the assets you have.
Yeah.
So the assets you have make you. It
make
goes
you who
back
you
to,
are.
yeah. It
It
goes back
determines
to
who
what
you are.
Musa was saying, to say, at the time he was a DJ, or rather pursuing that path of a DJ. He thought his identity was found in the assets, or rather the byproducts of that person's decision, in order to attract a certain people to become a DJ or better DJ, forgetting that DJing is not just the assets, it's the skill, right? So even with for the guys and maybe the girls as well, like I think early in our podcast, Palesa was also speaking about how makeup can be an identifying factor. How it's funny how like you need to change the character in order to be another character that you're trying to be. So really, identity is such a big aspect. And I'm speaking to the gentleman to say, if you really don't find yourself really solid and identified as a child of God. And I want you to understand what it means to be a child. Being a child of God means you have access into that home or into that domain and whatever it comes with. That's why if you look as far as even surnames show that you are of that group and of that population. You're identified within that clan. If we're gonna go that deep. So being called child of God, it comes with the responsibilities, it comes with the blessing, the weight, all that. And when you live according to that, you are identified as that. You look at Jesus Christ of Nazareth. The names, even in the way they identify themselves in the Bible, it shows a place of belonging.
Yeah.
Belonging,
When
yeah.
you understand your identity, it shows a place of purpose, of vision, of who you are representing. You
Yeah,
understand? So
you're right.
it's your inkulu in
Inkulu.
the sense that it's not just your face. No. It's not just your name. It's what are you representing and reproducing into the atmosphere that says you are of this. That's why it speaks so highly of or rather when we fellowship, we deem identity in the fruit you produce. Because fruit is a direct proportional of who you are as well.
Yeah.
And you identify in the spiritual by fruits. Meaning what have you replicated, good or bad? That shows the identifying factor
And you
about
can't
you.
fake fruit.
And you can't fake fruit.
And you can't fake fruit. And I think that's why we live in times where people just don't know like where they are, where they stand. I know a girl that identified as another gender, and I know this is like very
Deep.
controversial, but she identified as another gender, and then she saw good to, oh, this is actually not fruitful. Like the things that it was producing in her life were not fruitful in a sense that they were good for her, and then she would identify as that, and then she would identify as that. And that's the attack of the enemy, is that he wants you to identify as anything but God, or as anything, or identify with anything but your creator, the one who knew you even before you were formed in your mother's womb, the one who formed you and knit you together. And so I think identity really has the 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 ability to shape how you think as well, how you act. And like what Umbusa was saying is that I know I have a friend. I think he's Tswana or Sutu, but he said one day he identifies as Zulu. Okay, so his music, he listens to Muscati. He wears umbrella. I'm sure if he watches this, it's gonna be like, oh, okay.
Me now.
Like he wears umkele, he says uyinkabi, and all of that. Is that true? No, it's not true.
And it ties to what Musa was saying.
And even what you
Say
say,
now you are idolizing now a culture.
now it's forming you, but that's not the fruit he's gonna recreate. His children are not gonna be Umzulu. His children, they might speak it, they might be all of this and all of that, right? So identity is so powerful, like it forms, it shapes who we are, it whatever. But at the end of the day, you need to think to yourself, what is it ultimately going to leave as a legacy or as fruit, as Usnigiwe was saying? And I think even when we go to our women fellowship and all of that, they speak to the single girls especially. They say that when you understand who you are and also whose you are, you know, who you belong to, there are certain things you won't allow. And so identity gives discernment. Identity helps you to discern what is good or what is not good. And so that's why as a child of God, then it's so important for us to be restored in our identity. Snigo explained how Jesus' identity was stripped from him in a physical sense so that we can gain our identity. That's why the cross and the blood of Jesus are so important, because there's always a great exchange. But yeah, that's just means that identity, what did I say? Identity form servant. Identity forms discernment. You're able to, guys. I think we need to continue this conversation.
No. I
We
think
need to continue this
the
conversation.
on the right track. Yeah, we should continue. But
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing about also identity is just the sense of belonging. The biggest way we lose our identity is not just only not knowing who we are, but forgetting who we are.
Yeah.
And that brings a sense of like lack of belonging and lack of understanding and lack of, because even our identity is what we base our principles on, because we identify by certain principles and certain way we live our life. And I said I'm a child of God, so I can't entertain certain things. Or I said me and my house will serve the Lord, so do you stand by that and all that stuff? So guys, it's really jam packed. We want to unpack it a bit more.
Yeah, but I mean, on the comments,
yeah, in the
in
the
comments,
comments,
what does
share
identity mean to
what
you?
does it mean to you? Where's your perspective about it?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and then now we'll unpack it a little bit more, because
We'll take a look.
this was the surface level of the
All right.
conversation.
But thank you for joining us, guys. Like, share, subscribe, give it to someone who you know would see. They've been asking questions about. Oh, bani.
Yeah, yeah, no, all jokes aside, please
Really?
comment, subscribe, share,
Yeah.
like, comment. See you in the next one. Sharp.